In this video, I will cover a concept and a theory that is abstract. I've covered it before in other videos. One of those was Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and others. I have a playlist titled Orbs Are Spirit Beings Manifesting in Our Frequency, and that is a compilation of most of my videos about what I believe orbs are. What I'm showing now is album art from the band Asia, which included members of the band Yes. And that album art is by artist Roger Dean, who made the other album art for Yes, and also Uriah Heep, including the infamous Demons and Wizards album cover from the Uriah Heep album, all very occultic. As you can see, it's a dragon in the water playing with an orb that is near its head, and you can get a lot of clues from album art. The concept of the dragon's tail and the dragon's head, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, Dark Star, Black Hole Sun are probably all synonymous terms referring to the same thing, which is referring to the home of the fallen angel Lucifer and or Satan, which is like a large dark orb or dark star, also referred to as a black hole sun and maybe also a Dyson sphere. Whereas the other smaller orbs that are being witnessed are also spirit fallen angel beings. I think this is worth covering again because of new information that came to light and also because of all the orb and UAP sightings currently happening. On April 8th, CERN fired back up their Large Hadron Collider, or the LHC. And that is when the solar eclipse happened that was promoted so heavily back on April 8th. As I've said before, I think CERN is a large circle drawn over and over, a witch circle, to summon spirits. That's what you do in witchcraft. You draw a circle, but they're drawing it over and over and over. But specifically, they say at CERN that they are looking for dark energy, or you could say a dark energy star. This is the configuration of the LHC, and I believe it correlates to the configuration of the dragon's head and the dragon's tail, which is used in heraldic tinctures on royal heraldry to this day, and it's a type of torque, I believe. The heraldic configuration is carried forward from Babylon. Torque is a force that can cause an object to rotate about an axis, and torque is what causes an object to acquire angular acceleration. Now I'm going to play a video that I made about all of this a while back.
I believe the alchemical symbol of the torque, which symbolizes the dragon's head and the dragon's tail, otherwise known as the lunar node, is further related to the Large Hadron Collider at CERN. You see it down here, dragon's tail and dragon's head on the lower right. Because it's also iconography of the pagan god Cernunnos, the torque is. The Babylonian alchemical symbol for the dragon's head and tail, otherwise known as the lunar node, is the torque, as you can see in this chart of heraldic tinctures here, which this same chart associates colors with heavenly bodies. And ancient Babylonians have a heavy influence on European heraldry of the royals because ultimately it is witchcraft, which comes from the fallen angels and demons. The heraldic art, as they call it, has been passed down from ancient Babylon and likely before that, but passed down to the Scythians and down to the current royal bloodline. And this is a very specific discipline and tradition maintained by the heraldists. One of the concepts in heraldic tinctures is this poetic designation, which correlates colors to planets, the sun and the moon, and to the dragon's head and dragon's tail, otherwise known as the lunar node, symbolized by this torque, which is a ring with two balls on the end. The Babylonian alchemy symbol for the lunar node, or the dragon's head and the dragon's tail, is the torque, which you see here, the ring with the two balls at either end, and those probably represent the sun and the moon. The lunar nodes are the 2 points where the moon's orbital path crosses the ecliptic. The sun's apparent yearly path on the celestial sphere, and this is also known as the dragon's head and tail. In medieval texts, along with the 7 classical planets, it was believed that an 8th pseudoplanet was the cause of solar and lunar eclipses and was termed the dragon. I pointed out before that the depiction of the lunar node looks very similar to what we see represented in the LHC at CERN. The heraldry, the related cosmological perspective, and the Large Hadron Collider at CERN are all related to alchemy, which can be defined as to move, change, or create as if by magic. The Celtic horned god Cern, or Cernunnos, is usually depicted in ancient iconography wearing or holding a torque, which is what you see in his hand here. In the other hand is a snake, and in the other hand is a torque. Most ancient depictions of Cernunnos, or Cern for short, have him either wearing the torque around his neck or simply holding it in his hand. And here you see it, it's just right there on his midsection. As a horned god, he's synonymous with Pan and other horned gods, which represent the underworld or god of the crossroads and reincarnation. He's found everywhere in ancient paganism. Torque artifacts have been found in Scythian, Thracian, and Celtic and other cultures, and are identified with the wearer as a person of high rank. The Emperor Augustus was presented by the Gauls with a gold torque weighing 100 Roman pounds. A torque from the 1st century BC in the Winchester Hoard was a diplomatic gift from a Roman to a British tribal king. A royal torque was worn by Prince Cynog ap Brashon of Wales, found in Norfolk. A lot of times in the Game of Thrones, Daenerys Targaryen wears a torque. Here you see her pictured with a torque around her neck, and one end is the dragon's head, and the other end is the dragon's tail. In jewelry, a lot of times a torque was made from twisted metal, and the word torque comes from Latin to twist. In physics, a torque is the rotational linear force, and a torque can be thought of as a twist applied to an object. So, the torque is the symbol for the dragon's head or tail in alchemy, a poetic designation in royal heraldry related to cosmology, representing the dragon's head or tail, otherwise known as a lunar node. The lunar nodes are the 2 points where the moon's orbital path crosses the ecliptic, the sun's apparent yearly path on the celestial sphere. CERN is where the Large Hadron Collider is located, and CERN is named for the horned god Cernunnos of the underworld, whose iconography is usually associated with a torque. The torque is also usually worn by nobility, hence another reason we see it in heraldry. And the LHC design at CERN looks exactly like the dragon's head or tail, which is the lunar node, which is represented by a torque. And all of this witchcraft dates back to ancient Babylon and before that, but is maintained to this day, as we can see here in the heraldry. And it seems to be related to something that CERN and the LHC are trying to affect cosmologically, like the eclipse maybe, seeing as how the Large Hadron Collider layout that they provide looks so similar to the lunar node or the dragon's head and tail. But in ancient Babylon, they thought that it was the 8th pseudoplanet that was the cause of the solar and lunar eclipse, and they termed it the dragon. And now I'm going to discuss something that sounds a little crazy, but nothing seems to be off the table these days. And in my video titled Dark Star, I talked about a video that I had watched where a guy was showing that the eclipse could not have been the moon, the one in April. And I don't know what it was exactly, but it could have been a dark energy star or a black sun or a black hole sun. And is that the same thing as the eighth celestial body that the ancient Babylonians call as the dragon, represented as the lunar node, symbolized by the torque? CERN is also interested in dark matter, which is supposedly what makes up the dark star. The Kingdom in Context channel suggests that eighth planet, pseudo-planet, is actually the home of the literal dragon. And he talks about that in his 42 series, in case you're interested. And I don't know exactly what it is, but there's something very witchcraft going on with all of this. Thanks for listening.
Okay, so now let's look at these tinctures again. Because I know this is a strange concept. The dragon's head and tail are related to solar and lunar eclipses from ancient times. In alchemy, the dragon's head is the material subjected to transmutation to produce the Philosopher's Stone. Heraldry is strongly under the influence of magical views and alchemist ideas to this day. The designations of royal heraldry were documented during the Tudor and Stuart dynasties in England between the 14 and 1500s, when a system of 9 tinctures was developed with dukes, earls, barons, princes, kings, and emperors. And kings and emperors were represented by the planets. But it says these concepts originated with the Babylonians, and I would argue long before that with Azazel, who taught men the exact concepts represented on the heraldic tinctures, and I covered that in my video about heraldic tinctures. But back to CERN and the idea that it represents a torque. CERN, I believe, is not only a witchcraft circle to summon spirits, but also a torque. Or force that they are using to summon the ultimate fallen angel spirit, the dark energy star, or the eighth pseudo-planet, or the dragon, as a form of their alchemy. Medieval texts document an eighth pseudo-planet was the cause of the solar and lunar eclipses, termed the dragon, split into 2 parts representing the lunar nodes, termed the dragon's head, which is also Ra, and the tail. So, was this done on April 8th by CERN? Because this was the date of the lunar eclipse that was so heavily advertised. So let's look at these lunar nodes again. This is how they are represented, with the sun in the middle and the earth and the moon revolving around the sun. But that's definitely not the way they are depicted in the lunar node from the dragon's head and dragon's tail used in heraldry. You have the sun and the moon revolving around the earth, which I thought was interesting. This is album art. The artist is X2C. And one of the songs on this album is That's Not the Moon. Another song title is New Doors. But you see here it looks like they are depicting the earth in the middle with a pyramid and some sort of dark star descending. Notice that the sun and the moon appear to be rotating around the earth on this one also. It also looks like the Alpha X Omega, spoken of by Gorilla 199, symbolized by a pyramid, and Omicron or Omega in the Alpha. More on that later. But it seems after that April 8th CERN restart and the supposed eclipse is when we started seeing more of the UAPs and the orbs manifesting. And then shortly after this is when the Harvard paper was released about disclosures suggesting the idea of cryptoterrestrials. See my video titled Externalization of the Hierarchy. Now I'm going to play some of another video of mine titled Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and I know some of this information will be a repeat, but I think it's okay because the concepts are kind of hard to grasp.
A total solar eclipse, astronomers say, is the moon passing in front of the sun. That's what they tell us. And maybe it is sometimes, or all the time, or none of the time. I mentioned before about a video that I watched where an engineer and someone who follows biblical cosmology basically proposed that the eclipse was not the moon back in April of 2024. I'll link it in the description box. I've been thinking about this a lot lately and came across some other information that's helping me to think about what that actually could have been. Some of it I've covered in other videos, but I'm going to compile it all here in this one. It's going to sound crazy, but I'm actually basing it on how the military, the royals, the ancient Babylonians, Egyptians, other Beast Empire cultures, and other people who are probably part of the initiated oftentimes refer to it in other forms of media, movie, music, and album art. And here are the references by those groups that I will be going over relating to that sphere, or the eclipse, being something other than the moon. Number 1, Zeus. Number 2, a dark star or black sun or black hole sun. 3, dragon's head, dragon's tail. 4, lunar node. 5, Lucy in the sky with diamonds. 6, the Eye of Ra. So regarding Zeus, the U.S. Naval Observatory called the April 2024 eclipse Zeus. Here's a quote from the U.S. Naval Observatory website regarding that April 8th solar eclipse. Nothing there is beyond hope. Nothing can be sworn impossible, nothing wonderful, since Zeus, father of the Olympians, made night from midday, hiding the light of the shining sun, and sore fear came upon men. That's from a Greek poet. Zeus is the sky and thunder god in ancient Greek religion who rules as king of the gods on Mount Olympus. And Zeus is also synonymous with Satan. Can be. The Romans slaughtered the Galatians and defiled their temple at Pergamum with false pagan idols, including an altar to Zeus. Jesus referred to Pergamum as the throne of Satan. The next reference is the dark star or the dark energy star. I did a video titled Dark Star that outlined how the dark star is frequently depicted in album art and film. The Kingdom in Context channel gives a lot more examples of how this is depicted historically, especially in Egypt, imported from Babylon. But to summarize, the so-called scientists, or knights of scientism that I like to call them, define a dark star as a hypothetical astrophysical object, an alternative explanation for black holes, a type of superfluid or dark energy. The dark star, dark matter, is a star heated by annihilation of dark matter particles within it. And isn't that what CERN is looking for, dark matter? Or maybe the dark star. The next reference is the dragon's head and the dragon's tail. In royal heraldry, still to this day, there's a tradition called poetic designation, which originated with the ancient Babylonians. And this designation correlates colors with planets, the sun and moon, and what they call as the dragon's head and dragon's tail. And the dragon's head and dragon's tail is synonymous with the lunar node. See, here is the lunar node. And the lunar node is synonymous with the 8th pseudoplanet, identified in medieval times, called the dragon. And what they believed in medieval times was the cause of solar and lunar eclipses. So in medieval times, they believed that eclipses were caused by an 8th pseudoplanet named the dragon. And this is still represented in heraldry as the dragon's head and dragon's tail, which is synonymous with the lunar node. And this is what the lunar node looks like. It looks like an eclipse. It says the lunar nodes are 2 points where the moon's orbital path crosses the ecliptic. The next reference is Lucy in the sky with diamonds. During the lunar eclipse, there's what is called a diamond ring effect. It's the bright side or spot on the lunar edge for a few seconds during a solar eclipse. I wonder if this is the meaning of the song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. We know that Lucy is Lucifer because John Lennon was a druid. Now the only lovers left alive vampire movie. I'm going to play what Eve, the vampire, says to her vampire husband, Adam.
Did you know that there's a diamond up there the size of a planet? It's a white dwarf impressed high at the sky. And it's not only a radiant diamond, but it also emits music of gigantic calm. A diamond that emits the music of gigantic calm. It's just 50 light years away in the constellation Centaurus.
So what she's referring to is a dark star. Centaurus, the astronomers say, is one of the closest active galaxies to Earth. They say it has a supermassive black hole at its core, which expels massive jets of matter that emits radio waves. And that must be the gong that Eve is referring to. So there you have the diamond correlated to a white dwarf, dark star, or black hole. The next reference is the Eye of Ra. The Kingdom in Context channel has a series titled 42 and another one titled Investigating Babylon. The host, Sean, believes in biblical cosmology, and he proposes in those series that the sphere depicted in ancient Babylonian and Egyptian artifacts is the home of the dragon, a type of boat in the sky, and it is the Eye of Ra. The sphere, or the Eye of Ra, is just another depiction of a same being, which can be also personified as the dragon and other things, which is interesting when you think about that in terms of the orbs that I've been covering, and also the album art that I've been covering, which will sometimes show the dragon alongside an orb or a sphere. Sean also highlights the depiction of this sphere in media, and he gives examples of it having been featured in the Commonwealth Games ceremony coming down on the Tower of Babel with the bull. And I'll link his videos in the description box of this one. I'd asked him on that live stream what he thought the sphere or boat was made of, and he didn't speculate, but I'm going to do that now. So I've been covering orbs in other videos. I'll just play a little bit of this. And it seems to me that spiritual beings are manifesting as orbs, and I've shown how they are being summoned as well. And my speculation is that perhaps the sphere is the spiritual manifestation of Lucifer. I talked to a person who says that he has information that elites do summon these orbs, and that he has also summoned them. And this is what he said. He said, "These beings," speaking of the orbs and the fallen angels in seraph form, and their place of origin are energetic in nature. They are not carbon-based life forms like us. They exist in the same space as us, but within parts of the visual light spectrum that human eyes are not designed to observe. When humans see them, it's because they've shifted their frequency into the spirit or the physical world. They are a living energy of sorts. Their ability to tune in and out of different layers of reality accounts for most of their uncanny characteristics, such as being present while unseen, appearing as orbs of light that can traverse through solid objects, shape-shifting, and dream communications. So that actually tracks with the idea of the dark star defined by theoretical physicists as a type of superfluid or dark energy. And that also tracks with the album art of Alan Parsons, who is Order of the British Empire. He uses the Eye of Ra, or the eye in the sky, on his art, and he also uses the sphere. The lyrics to one of his songs are, "I am the eye in the sky, looking at you, I can read your mind. I am the maker of rules, dealing with fools, I can cheat you blind." Sounds like he's referring to Lucifer to me. And he has an album titled Lucifer. And this is it. He also has an album with a sphere, or an orb. And this is it. He has this one also. He has this one also, with pyramid and spheres and orbs, and the main one, it looks like coming down to the pyramid there. He also has this one, which is an Ouroboros, and that is a dragon's head and a dragon's tail. It also looks like the torque, which is the alchemical symbol for the dragon's head and tail, or the lunar node, or the eighth pseudoplanet referred to by the Babylonians and used in heraldry to this day. But the title of the album is Project Vulture, and the vulture is also associated in ancient Egypt with the Eye of Ra. So, since psychedelic drugs cause people to interact with the spirit realm, wouldn't it make sense that John Lennon, the Druid, when writing a song about a psychedelic trip, would refer to what he encountered as Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds? That song was on the Sgt. Pepper's album, the first after they murdered Paul McCartney and replaced him with Billy Shears. And remember, Eve the vampire referred to it as the big diamond in the sky also. So whether this eclipse, sphere, Eye of Ra, dark star, Zeus, dragon's head, dragon's tail, eighth pseudoplanet, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, is something physical or interdimensional, or a spiritual manifestation or deception, is unclear for now. But in prior videos, I've shown it to probably be synonymous with the dark star, black hole sun, lunar node, or dragon's head and tail, as it was called by the ancient Babylonians, and Zeus per the Greeks, and the Eye of Ra by the ancient Egyptians. It's definitely curious that this occult concept has been carried forward throughout history by different cultures, specifically the beast empires. Apparently, ancient archaeological digs pull up spheres frequently in different cultures. It's also curious that CERN was fired up on the very day that the last eclipse, which was advertised so heavily, and that the LHC actually looks like a depiction of the lunar node or dragon's head, dragon's tail, referred to as the eighth pseudoplanet. Is that what the eclipse was? Was it summoned? And is that the type of alchemy? Or was it a deception or some sort of Carrington event?
So I know a lot of that is a review, but I think sometimes that's the only way to learn is to go over information, and that's the reason I do the videos, because it's just as much for me so that I can learn by doing research and making notes and then recording it. So the theoretical physicists refer to dark energy star as dark matter, which is what CERN is looking for, the eighth pseudoplanet, or the dragon, or the mothership. And in reference to it making the sound of a gong, this is the sound that people are picking up on their radios in New Jersey, where all these orbs are seen. I did a video titled Bang a Gong and Long Legs. I remember that the dragon's head in Babylon was an adaptation of Ra. So all that is a review, but I decided to revisit it since the concepts are obscure and I have new subscribers, but also because of all the UAPs and spheres that are being viewed now. But I'm also revisiting it because of this video from Gorilla199, and I'll play what he says about the Alpha X Omega, which he says represents a spaceship or UAP or dark star landing or descending onto a pyramid, and the Omega, which means last, looks like a torque or the dragon's tail in alchemical symbolism.
The most dangerous and most sinister organisation in the entire history of mankind is an organisation called Omada Aho. Now, an Omada is a team. So the same as you would have sorority groups in the universities in the USA, and they would use Greek letters to identify themselves, usually 3 Greek letters. This team does the same. They are called Team Aho. Aho means sorrow. That's Team Sorrow. Let's just take a look at who Team Sorrow are and the worldwide evidence that proves that they are the world's largest and most sinister conspiracy.
This is the mark of the beast, the pyramid, the X, and the disc. The disc is also known as the flying disc, the winged disc, the horn disc, the sun disc, and a halo. Wherever you see these symbols, in whatever order you see them,
or angle you view them from,
these organisations, be they governmental or business, are connected directly to the Freemasons. And the Freemasons are a satanic cult which goes back to the days of Babylon, the mother of all prostitutes. They are a satanic trade union controlling the entire world and all of its trade and wars, etc. And this is their mark, the mark of the beast. And the mark of the beast is a logo, same as you see outside governmental buildings, businesses, etc. And you perceive the word logo to mean some pictures which have a representation to a company or organisation. That is as far as you get to understanding what it really means. The word logo is Greek. It means word. So when you are looking at a logo, you are looking at a word, and that word has a meaning. And the mark of the beast is a word, and it has a meaning. The meaning is deep and terrible sorrow, and the word is aho. Reading from bottom to top. Let me show you how.
Almighty God said, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. The devil wants to be God and parodies everything that God does. The horn disc, also known as the winged disc, which is basically a flying saucer, and the pyramid, which is a flying saucer landing pad, are the devil's chosen tools to parody Alpha and Omega. The mark of the beast in its most basic format consists of 3 Greek letters, Alpha, Omega, and the letter He, which in English is pronounced X, but in the Greek language is pronounced as an H. The 3 basic letters of the mark of the beast spell the word aho, which is Greek and means deep and terrible sorrow. Here are just 10 examples. Reading each of these symbols from bottom to top, using the pyramid as the base and the omega as the capstone, I will decipher each one of these for you. Reading from bottom to top, this is the basic format. Alpha, He, Omega. But mostly the Omicron is used to replace the Omega. Hence you will mostly see the mark of the beast in this format. Alpha, Xi, Omicron. Again, spelling Aho. Here is an Alpha He Omicron version, and here is an Alpha He Omega version. The modern Masonic logo is the same thing, but slightly more convoluted, using an I at the top as an upside-down Omega. This is the Nephilim abomination known as Ishtar. The mark of the beast is also hidden in this statue. In this blasphemous depiction of the crucifixion, we can see the Alpha, He, Omega, and Omicron versions. This statue of the Nephilim giant Dagon has the Alpha, He, Omega version. The American dollar bill contains the Alpha, He, Omega mark of the beast. By placing the eagle in the center of the dollar, the word Aho immediately becomes apparent. By turning the dollar and the 3 symbols 90 degrees, the pyramid, X, and flying disc also immediately become apparent.
I think he's onto something. Doesn't the Omega look like the torque or the dragon's tail? He's got the pyramid as the Alpha and the sphere or dark star as the Omega, but the Omega, it also seems to resemble the dragon's tail or the torque in the end. If he's correct, this group who can summon those dark stars would be the most sinister group historically, to include the ancient Egyptians, Babylonians, Sumerians, Greeks, Romans, all the leaders of the beast empires, the bloodliners who liken themselves to god kings, and their witches, druids, or high priests. Now, check out this album art, which depicts exactly what he just described. This art is described as a Dyson sphere, and Dyson spheres are described as hypothetical megastructures that surround a star to capture its energy. It looks like this one, and this is an image from the Alan Parsons Project Album art, who also had an album named Lucifer, which depicts the same thing, pyramid with UFO and a sphere. Another of his albums was Lucifer, and another of his albums had an Ouroboros on the cover, which is a dragon's head and a dragon's tail, also synonymous with the torque, I think. And another had an Eye of Ra, which we already said is another name for the dragon's head, Ra. So many clues we can get from album art. Now I'm going to play a little of a video that I did about Dyson spheres.
This article is being pushed by AP. It's on MSN, Live Science, Science Alert, and other sources, because the sources get their instructions for what to publish as news from one main source, which controls the propaganda, and that is Associated Press. So what are they saying? What are they pushing? Are we not alone? 7 stars cloaked by enigmatic Dyson spheres. It says at least 7 stars in the Milky Way might be encircled by advanced alien technology known as Dyson spheres. These are just some images that come up when you search on Dyson spheres. They look like orbs, and they also look like what has been depicted as dark stars or black holes. And are these different things? I don't think they are. I think they're all the same thing, which is fallen angel spirits. It says Dyson spheres, as initially theorized by physicist Freeman Dyson in 1960, are hypothetical structures that could be built by technologically advanced civilizations. They would encompass a star or a black hole to harness its energy output. And that's what this Freeman Dyson said about Dyson spheres. And before I looked up Freeman Dyson, I would have bet all the money in my bank account that he was Fellowship of the Royal Society. And why? Because these are the types of people who are initiated and who float these ideas, and they're likely in contact with these spirits. And look at that, he is Fellowship of the Royal Society. Okay?
So in summary, I think there is some serious summoning going on, and I think it's been there since the Egyptian times in an effort to summon the old gods, including Lucifer or Satan or Ra or Zeus, whatever name you want to call it. And I think CERN is the new technology they are using to at least try to do it, along with other witchcraft that is being practiced at the highest levels and even by individuals. So the question then is, are they actually able to do it? Are they just on psychedelic drugs and communicating with the fallen and can't actually manifest anything, or are they manifesting? Well, if you watch my video entitled Falling Angel, and if you believe what that witness said, then it's possible to summon fallen angels, and it's been being done by the elites, and even he said that he was able to do it. And that's without any technology like CERN. So I can imagine what they're able to do with something like CERN is pretty intense. And also quantum computing. Musk said that AI and quantum computing can summon the demon. All these people, I do believe, are on drugs and do communicate with the demons, but I'm just wondering how effective their sorcery actually is when we're approaching the end times, because Gary Wayne often says that we are now approaching a time when our technology is starting to catch up with the ancient technology. I think this is why so many orbs and UAPs are manifesting now. And it goes without saying that, of course, those at the higher levels of the military also know exactly what is happening, because this is what they are taught, since they are either descended from bloodline families or are trained in the occult, or both. And we have seen way too many examples of that not to draw that conclusion, and the most obvious one being that the Nazi occult scientists who came to the U.S. and founded NASA, Jack Parsons, who worked with Aleister Crowley, a bloodliner, also to summon the fallen. Thanks for listening.